Hello, I am Umbrenero and welcome to Umbrenero's Life. Today's video is my October 2023 Plan With Me. So the first area I am working on is my monthly calendar of the spread. And the theme for October is a tarot theme. I don't know if I fully got that incorporated, but I tried to include the elements that I felt were easiest to include where I could include them. So the first thing I did was all of the line work. And this month's spread is a little plainer than other months have been because I just wanted that simple feel this month after doing such a colorful theme last month. And yes, I did make mistakes while I was drawing some of my lines, and I'm not trying to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect, and there's little things that just make me happy of, hey, I made a mistake, but oh well. So after I had all the boxes outlined, I went to outlining two of the symbols of some tarot cards, and I added October down the side of the left page. Next was to get the key filled in, and what I was doing at this moment was trying to find all of the colors I was using because I put things away before I recorded when I should not have. So I had to go and find all of my colors I was going to use for my key and get them all pulled back out before I could continue. And even here, I realized I made a mistake, but that happens. Easy to just color over where I made the mistake because the color I was actually using was quite a bit darker than what I used. But after I had the key done, I needed to get my calendar labeled. So I went in and used some of the new dotting markers I have to just put a little splash of color on each square. And I did this with a good number of colors just so that way it wasn't a plain thing. And even there, I made a mistake with the dots, but it happens. Then it was going in, adding all the numbers. And the last thing that I needed to do for my cover page was actually to color in the two symbols I have there, which is a sword and a cup. And if you know anything about tarot, they are two of the symbols that are represented quite a bit. And now for the monthly log. It was a very simple thing, again. So I started with all of my line work. So that meant making my box around my area where I'm going to put in all of my monthly things that I need to know for the month. This time I went with a bigger area to write that's divided in half, so that way I could keep track of what's taking place in the first half of the month versus the second half of the month. Next was getting the symbol for this section drawn, and I decided to do the pentacle, which is the coin-like item from the tarot cards. And I just wanted something bigger on this page as a design, just so that way I had it represented somewhere. And yes, out of the 4 different symbols I used for the tarot representation, this was the hardest one to draw, and I am glad I went and sketched it out in advance so that way I knew what I was getting into. It was very helpful. Once I had the pentacle all finished, I went and did my header for the page, which I simply did in a nice font because I just wanted that to be simple, as I didn't want to overwhelm myself this month. And before I added any color to this page, I went through and did a quick erase of some of the pencil lines because there were a lot more than you would have thought. And then the only thing that really got any color was the pentacle, as I'm playing with that minimal feel this month with the amount of color, because September had so much color. Next was my goals and things page, and it's going to be similar to how the monthly log was in the amount of design that goes into it, but it has its own little differences. So, like I did with the previous spread, I started with all of the line work first. And this time, instead of dividing the page vertically, I divided it horizontally, so that way each section had enough space to write, have things written out within it. And instead of drawing a full line dividing both sections, I decided I was going to use the symbol as kind of the dividing line between the two. It just made sense when I was sketching out my spread. So once the lines were all done, I went in and added my header before I even went to the symbol. And the last symbol that I had to include was the stick, or the wand as some people in tarot would refer to it as. Then the only little bit of color I added was to the wand, also known as the little stick, just for that little bit of color. And then I went and erased a little bit of the extra lines I had around my letters and along the lines. The next area is my content plan, which is my former content calendar. So, like I have done with all of the other areas so far, is I started with all of the lines. And this has a weird layout compared to how my content calendar used to be, because I wanted to be able to keep track of where I am on certain videos while I am looking at just my journal. So I wanted to include some areas here where I could do that. And I wanted to be able to keep track of what gaming videos I worked on during this time as well. So I started with drawing a calendar on the left page, and then on the lower right page, I made a section specifically for my gaming videos, right where I can keep track of what ones I got done and where in the process some of them are. Then on the upper right hand side is where I'm keeping track of my videos for this channel and the videos that where they are in my process to see, are they getting close to being out on time or not. So since I had my black pen out, I decided I was just going to do my labeling now instead of waiting. So across the bottom, I added content plan, and then I labeled my gaming section so that way I didn't forget that's what that area was for. Then was a quick erasing of some of the lines that were still visible that I did not need showing at all. And now was probably the harder part of this setup, which was adding in the dots for the days of the month and eventually the key that I use on this page for where in my process I am on videos. So the calendar was the easier part to add the dots to. And then when it came to filling out my other section here, I had to think, all right, what color is close to what section I want? So I used a red for my planning and preparing of videos. So like my pre-production stuff. Yellow I used for the recording aspects. And then I used purple for my editing process, which I have 4 steps to how I edit. And then I used blue for my finishing parts, which is like uploading, scheduling, and having my description ready. Then, after those were all thrown in, I quickly numbered the calendar, so that way it was done and I didn't have to worry about doing it later. And I went and defined what my key was as well, so that way I didn't forget what colors meant what. So the next section are my weekly logs, and like all of the other sections so far, is I'm going to start by drawing the lines of my boxes for the week. And this time I didn't want to use a black color for the lines, so I grabbed one of my gray Tombos just to change it up a little bit. But this time, I decided to do something a little different with how I was drawing my weekly log, and I drew the 2 days on the weekend separated from the actual Monday to Friday part of the week. I don't know why, I just wanted to try this different layout just to see how it works. So once I was done with all these lines, and yes, they weren't perfect, I went through and erased some of the pencil marks I had because I made some changes from my original sketch that I had on the page where I wanted lines to go to where they actually ended up. And here is where I brought the symbols more into play because I wanted to include them a little more when I got to this point. And I used them as the background to the number for the day of the week that it was. So I drew quick little cups, some of them upright, some of them flipped. I drew some pentacles, just simple little circles. And then I drew a couple swords and a couple sticks. And they weren't always perfect. Like, that sword really got very wide. But that's what I did for, like, the little design to bring the tarot portion back into the theme. And then this was repeated the rest of the way for the rest of my weekly logs. In all, it took me about an hour to do this entire monthly setup, which is not bad, considering I have had some that have taken me 3-4 hours to do. And there I made yet another mistake drawing the line. I think it was because my hand kept getting stuck on the desk. But that stuff happens, and I made it work. Like there, I tried really hard not to make the same mistake again. And the last section I had was my reflection section. And this time I did it a little bit different than last month, as I had a page and a half left at the end of this month's spread. So I kind of expanded and added a new section into this. So first thing, like I've been doing on all the other parts, was drawing my lines. And I made a mistake right off the bat and drew one line longer than the others, but it's like, I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just gonna let it stay. Then I drew 4 boxes on the right page for 4 of the parts of my reflection. So once all of these lines were done, I went in and started putting in some labels for the sections that I had just created. So on the left page, I have a things for November area. So that means anything that needs to get put into November when I do my monthly reset. I'm going to throw things here throughout the month, hopefully, and make sure I get stuff written down as I am going, so I don't have to think at the end of the month, all right, what did I forget? But then on the right page is where my main reflection title is, and then I have a good things that happen, not so good things that happen, an area for improvements, and my little stats area that I've been using, which I quickly threw in a label for content related items like I have the last month or so. But in all, I like this layout a bit. It's pretty minimal compared to other ones that I have done, but that's what I was feeling this month, and we'll see how well it works. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I am Umbrenero. Bye!